It's Monday. It's 12:30. It's Fish. The voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, joining the Dan Dockett Show.
Hiya, Fish.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. It was so nice to see you. Once again, Indiana played hard as hell, got beat, but I saw you at the Purdue game, and it was lovely.
It was lovely. I appreciate your coming up.
Hey, Fish, you and I ripped them pretty good last week, effort-wise. A little different this week, is it not, or no?
There is absolutely no question, Doc, that the two games played this week very much mirrored that ball game against Michigan State a few weeks back. And it all boiled down, Doc, to fierce effort, did it not?
It did.
It was fierce effort. They just busted their butt the entire 40 minutes of both ball games, well, 45 in case of the Iowa Hawkeyes, but they just busted their tail. They played hard. They still struggle to shoot the basketball, which, has become the norm. But this team really battled the defensive end of the floor. And despite the fact that, I think I equated the Purdue-Indiana ball game to the long-gone standing rival between Bloomfield and Lagodi, because it was that kind of performance in the sense of being able to score the basketball or the difficulty in doing so. So, I was really happy about that. But then you get beat, and you wonder, can they carry this over to the next ball game? Because that's something that they've had a really tough time doing. And they did. They played as hard in that game against Iowa as they did against Purdue. They gave themselves a chance to win. They didn't, and they didn't win. It wasn't because they lost the game. It was because Iowa won the game because Jordan Bohannon went nuts at the end.
Fish, I've been watching a lot of hoops. You've been watching a lot of hoops. I'm not sure that I've seen a guy make three in a row like he made them, how he made them, as well defended as he was, Fish. I'm telling you, I'm not sure I've ever seen three in a row like that for the win. I may be early in the game, but not for the win, brother.
I agree. I think that was one of the greatest offensive performances of shooting that I've ever seen. I don't think anybody's ever done that I've watched, and I've been doing it for 50-plus years in total, but I've never seen it at the high school level, the college level. I've never seen it like that in the NBA. Well, I take that back. I think Reggie Miller had a pretty good ball game one night.
He did.
But honestly, it may just be the second time in my entire history of watching basketball, and I watched so many games. I mean, it was phenomenal what that kid did.
I was stunned. I know, Fish, I was talking about this earlier. And it really does come down to effort. Indiana loses to Iowa. All right. They lose to Purdue. You make a free throw against Iowa, you probably win the game. Right? And I hate to put that on Robert Finney, but that's the reality of basketball sometimes.
Yep.
Don't play against Minnesota, fine. Purdue, you block out. Let's say you do block out, but you jump up, you get the rebound, you go to overtime. And if C.J. Jackson doesn't throw in that shot down three, you could be looking at a 3 out of 4 here, Fish.
Right.
And what a difference the season would be right now for Indiana fans, right?
My God, would it ever be a difference?
Right?
I mean, it's honestly what's happened to this team has been so debilitating, Doc, that at this juncture, there's no way you feel like there's any chance that this team can rebound here at the end, even though they can. It just feels like they can't. You know what I'm saying? Because they've had so many negative performances. Let's put it this way. I look at the Minnesota and the Nebraska games as being negative performances. I think those two games were just abominations in the sense of how hard or lack of energy or lack of effort, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, this team has dealt with a lot of different issues, confidence, the struggles internally, whatever they may be, because obviously Archie said drastic changes need to be made after that Minnesota ball game. And something has happened to change this team's percent or their ability to play hard. And whatever that is, their conversations amongst themselves, chats with the coaches, everybody getting whatever's on their chest off it. I don't know. I can't answer that question because I wasn't there. I just know what Archie said, and he said that they had some communication issues, and they finally maybe got some of them resolved. And in that context, That was huge because these last two ball games have been special, at least in the fierce effort aspect of it. And if they continue to play like that, Doc, they'll give themselves chances here at the end of the season.
Here's how I look at it, Fish. I agree with everything you said, but as a coach, you always know both things. You know how good it can be and how bad it can be. So you always think about how bad it could be. You just can't revert back to what happened in Minnesota, what happened to Nebraska at home and against Nebraska, and quite frankly, what happened at the beginning of the Michigan game. That always sticks in the back of your mind as a coach. It does. It's crazy.
I know, and that. How do you get? I mean, and the only thing that gets a coach over that is the end of the season.
Time, yeah. That's right.
That's called
that's
time.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you look at how hard they played in the three games here, and I think they played hard against Iowa and Ohio State too. Don't get me wrong. I think they played hard in those games, but I think the confidence that this team played with, or whatever they were missing, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Whatever they were missing. They got that back in the last two games, and that tells you that they can do what they have to do to give themselves a chance. And right now, I think that's all anybody's really looking for, because it's been such a disastrous month and a half, or 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it's been. All you're looking for right now is a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, and you hope it's not a train. And at this point, maybe it's not.
It was last week. I'm telling you, that thing was coming. Fish, I was telling people, Jason Benetti, I don't know if you know Jason, but he's one of my partners, and he doesn't have a dog in the fight. Yeah, he's a White Sox announcer. He literally is a genius, too. And Fish, last week during the game, I laid out so that he could rip Indiana. That's how frustrating it was.
Right. That was the Minnesota game you're talking about, right?
Minnesota, yeah. I'm sorry, Minnesota, yeah.
So, and I understand that. I mean, there's justification for what people were saying, because that you can't go through and just go through the motions. I don't care who you are as a basketball player. If you do that, you have opened yourself up to every bit of criticism that can be taken and shot at you. And honestly, it's justified, because that's not the way you play the game. I don't care how good or how bad you are, and I continue to bring up the 2009 Indiana basketball team, Tom Crean's first, that had no talent. And I'm not saying they aren't good kids and they weren't decent enough to play basketball, but they were not a team that could possibly win a lot of games. And they only won 6 all season long. But they busted their butt every time they walk out on the floor, with the exception of maybe one game that year where they just, I don't say that they gave up, they just didn't have it. They didn't have the energy level that night. But the rest of the season, they played hard every ball game and gave themselves, at least they put themselves in the picture of Indiana fans loving this team because of how hard they played. This team hasn't had that all the time this year, and in those 2 ball games I mentioned earlier, they didn't have it at all. And so they opened themselves up to all that negativity, and it was justified. So don't do that. You just play as hard as you did in the last 2 ball games and against Michigan State, and you'll have chances to win every one of them, and you'll give your fan base something to cheer about, for heaven's sakes.
And you know what? I mean, and look, it's Indiana, so make no mistake. Fish and I aren't saying you shouldn't win. I mean, you got to win. I mean, hell, that's
right.
But, and I've said this forever, if you cheat, I'm going to rip you. If you don't play hard, I'm going to rip you. Because those are 2 non-negotiables at Indiana University. That's how I view it, Fish. I mean, They're non-negotiables at IU. In my world, in your world anywhere, people that have been around for a little bit, those are non-negotiables.
Exactly. And honestly, I would feel if another team in the Big Ten was going through this whole thing and you looked at that team and said, boy, those guys aren't really playing hard at all, you'd be sitting there ripping them. It wouldn't matter who it was.
Right.
It's just, that's a fact of life. You've got to play hard. You've got to try. You've got to give effort. And if you do those kinds of things, people are going to say, well, the other team was just better. And that's what it boils down to. And Indiana fans especially, who have watched it for years and years and years, have watched Indiana teams that some were not all that talented. But, boy, almost every one of them very rarely ever gave up or didn't try. And to see that happen at IU, that's not good. Just not good.
And you know what doesn't help? The fact that Purdue plays hard.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's a standard that's been set, and boys, you just better not play below that standard. It's set up that simple.
It really is. And it's not hard to do. And again, look, I would rather every day Fish come on here. Let's say Indiana lost 12 or 13, but every day they played hard. I'd rather bitch about the fact that they can't win. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's not like fishing. This isn't fishing my first rodeo. So those of you that saying, "Oh, you're being soft because you're saying they're giving him credit for playing hard." No, well, okay, maybe so, but nobody gets it more than Fish and I that the idea at Indiana is to frickin' win.
Exactly. Exactly right. And nobody wants to lose. And nobody hates losing any more than I do. Trust me.
I've seen it.
I hate losing.
I've seen it.
But the point of the matter is you have to try. You have to bust your butt. And you're going to get beat sometimes, and that's just a fact of life. Nobody goes through seasons any longer in basketball at the college level unbeaten. And I've said that's never going to happen again. It may, but I don't think I'll be alive when it does.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If 1976 is a long time ago, Fish.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I appreciate you, my man. I look forward to seeing you mañana. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Doc. We'll see you.
It's the best.